Okay, today's photo editing lesson, we're going to be talking about how to edit the northern lights. This is our end result photo that we want, and this is what we're starting with. So some obvious differences, but I'm going to be walking you through everything that I use in Adobe Camera Raw to edit this image to turn it into this. And as you may know, Adobe Camera Raw is really the same thing as Lightroom. The sliders are the same, the look is very, very similar. So if you use Lightroom, all these same lessons are going to translate to how I do it. So without further ado, let's go ahead and open the image. I'm going to be doing this in real time, so follow along with me. Oh, that's the ending image. Let's start with the correct unedited image. Okay, so here we go. Let's see. The first thing I'm going to start off with, as you know, is auto, just to see what it does. And, you know, I actually quite like it. Auto looks pretty good. So I don't usually keep auto, but I do note that when it does some good things for my photo, I come over here in the main 6 sliders here and start to really just look at what did it change? What does the intelligent algorithm look at and change that gets me to this sort of nice ending point? I certainly wouldn't stop here, but you know, a few things. I'm looking at exposure is well over 1 stop, so a stop at a third. It's reducing highlights. I definitely don't need to do that. Remember, anything that you edit is going to degrade the photo even a little bit. It's going to produce a little bit of noise and grain and just some deterioration of the image. So if you don't need to do it, you shouldn't do it. Same thing with shadows. Like, I don't want to boost the shadows. Like, I want the silhouetted trees. It does reduce the dark point, the black point, and it brightens up the whites a little bit. I'm probably going to do that on my own. So let's go ahead and come back to the original. And I know for sure I want to increase exposure a little bit. And we're going to go right there. I know for sky photos, whites is really good. It helps bring the stars out a lot. And then the real question is, do I want to do contrast? Well, let's step back. We know we want to reduce the blacks a little bit. That makes the sky look richer. And contrast really just kind of brightens the brights and darkens the dark. So, you know, I'm going to experiment and go to extremes on this just to see what it does. And it really doesn't do a lot for me. It kind of isolates the aurora, which frankly, because of this beautiful banding, I don't really want to do. So I'm just going to bring this back to even. If you ever struggle with getting it exactly back to 0, you know, say you're at +1, you can't quite get it at 0, just hover over this box and hit the down arrow on your keyboard. But that's a good starting point. But as you're going to see, I'm going to go into some masking that will actually help me isolate the foreground and the sky separately. But one thing I'm going to point out here is I love this tree. This is one of the reasons I love this photograph, is this tree that's just jutting up into the heavens, and the sort of arc shape of these treetops on the right with this wispiness that's almost cutting right through them, and then the banding on the right. So I really like the composition, but I don't necessarily like this bottom right hand corner. I think this snow is a little bit distracting. It almost makes like the photos unlevel. In addition, kind of to each his own, but you might find that this is a little distracting over here, and you get a little bit of, you know, it's not actual fringing on the corner because that's actually the lights, but it does make it look a little bit odd. So I might be doing some composition treatment. But first off, I'm going to come over, I'm going to hit C for cropping, and then if I hover over this value and hit up, I know that the left side is going to go up of the photo. And I'm just going to straighten it to remove that white snow. And I think I really like that. It might have been level to start off with, to be totally frank, but it does a few things. One is it removes that snow without having to crop a lot, because we don't want to crop Northern Lights photos too much because we want to retain as much of that sky in the scene as possible. But it also minimizes this little spot of this dangling tree here. But it's not quite enough, so I'm going to come over here and use my brush tool just to do a little bit of auto generation. So this is actually auto AI generation to remove that. We're going to hit remove. It's going to take a few seconds, and you'll notice that it works really nicely because it maps where it thinks stars should be in a very uniform pattern. So as we come back to this image, you barely even notice that that was there. It's really quite nice. I could come over here and do one of the other tools like a healing or a stamp, and then, you know, stamp from other parts of the scene. But it's really tough with stars because you don't want to map the exact same constellation in a different part of the sky. So I do like generative fill for that reason. Then the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to treat the foreground a little bit. I might bring out a little bit of the shadows, a little bit of lightness, just to see, and I'm going to do so by selecting the sky and then hitting X on my keyboard to inverse it. So I'm selecting the sky and then inversing it to get only the foreground. There are different ways to get to that point, but I do find that this is a nice, consistent way. And I'm just going to start with a little bit of shadows in the foreground. You know, I don't want to do a global edit of shadows because I don't want to bring out light in the shadows of the aurora itself. But notice how just a little bit of color there. I'm having to get to like plus 50, plus 58 to get any sort of color and light. So I'm really going to go back to more or less zero and try exposure instead. Exposure is a little more heavy-handed. And, you know, it's still silhouetted, but it's just bringing out a little bit. So I'm going to do a combination of just a tad of shadows and then one overexposure stop of light there. And I quite like that a lot. You know, do I want to mess with anything else? Not really, but I'm going to go back, hit E to get back to my editing pane. And then now I'm actually going to go back and create another mask of just the sky. And this is where astrophotography, northern lights, you can really start getting some of these meta sliders to do some great stuff. I tend to like clarity a lot for sky photos, night sky photos that is, because it really helps bring the stars out. Notice how different that is from there to there. That's obviously too much, but it really kind of brings some nice light out. I don't want to be too heavy-handed because if I start to get too high, it's going to give me some noise and grain in the photo, and I'm probably not going to do much denoising at all. So I'm just going to go to 25 here. Dehaze, if you haven't used it for dramatic skies, is a really good slider. Watch if I go to extremes, it really just does a lot of interesting stuff. It almost takes the aurora away, so I probably don't want to do much, if anything, to this photo, but I'm going to do just a little bit here, and then I know that it messes with the black points, so I'm actually going to come back up here and then go down a little bit further in blacks just to bring some richness out. This is the night sky after all. Then, you know, probably the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to white balance and just hit auto and see what it does. Okay, I do not like that. We see a lot of northern lights photos like this where it's very warm, it's very yellow. I tend to like cooler northern light shots, and you can see here, but maybe we want to bring up a little bit of the vibrance or saturation of the greens just to get a little bit more color there. So I'm going to come back over here to where I have my sky mask, hit that because I don't want to saturate the foreground, but now I'm just masking only the sky. And I'm going to come down to my saturation and just bring it up a little bit. I'm going to go to extremes just to see. Far too much, obviously. Go back to 0, somewhere in the middle. I feel like that's about right. I like that a lot. So hit E to go back to the main editing so I can do my global edits. And then, you know, from here, the question really is, am I going to do any sort of denoise? And if I zoom in on the photo, I bet you it's going to be pretty noisy. Yeah, you're seeing a good bit of noise there. I'm making note of the sharpness or lack thereof of the trees themselves, because what's going to happen when I denoise this is it's going to take some of the sharpness out of the scene. So I'm going to come back, make it a little bit smaller, and I am actually going to denoise this shot just because I do want to take some of that grain out of the photo. I'm going to hit denoise. It's going to take a little bit of time to do something, you know, a few seconds. So be patient. I guess I'll tell you a joke in the meantime. Do you know how much the aurora weighs? Not much. It's pretty light. There you go. It's pretty light. Yeah. Well, that only got us half the way there. Now you're just going to have to be extra patient with me. It's doing a lot of stuff in the background. It's working hard for us, so just be patient. We're denoising, and then what we're going to do after this is zoom back in and see the sort of lack of noise, and then check the sharpness a little bit around the trees, because we can go back in there and add some texture if we want to the foreground. 85, 86, 88, 89, 90. Okay, cool. So it is now denoised, and you can already tell it's a little bit softer in the sky. I'm going to zoom in, and yeah, wow, it definitely took a lot of that grain out of there. So that's really quite nice. Yeah, let's kind of zoom into the treetops. Still a little bit soft, but that's okay for our purposes. Yeah, so we're okay there. But you know, just for the heck of it, I'm going to show you what I would do if I wanted to sharpen it. I would hit my mask in the foreground. I come down here. I'm just going to mess with the texture a little bit, and we can see if we come back here, hit E. You know, it didn't do much, so I probably would not spend much time with that. But honestly, this is about where I want to be. I could say in my mind that it might be a little bit oversaturated. If I were to spend more time with this, I might mess around a little bit, you know, maybe desaturate a little bit. You know, heck, why not just do it in real time? Let's go back over to the sky mask. Let's bring the saturation down. It's at 33. Let's go halvesies. Let's go to 15. And then now, just for the heck of it, watch what happens when I warm the sky up with a warming filter. Is, we're getting different takes on the color there, and this is kind of where the art comes in. And to each his own. I mean, it's not that this is necessarily the perfectly accurate way. This is just a cooler look of that green. And you can bump it up a little bit, and it actually takes on a bit of like a saturation look. So I prefer green northern lights, and that's kind of what they look like in reality. So something back down here, but I might go up just a little bit, just to bring a little bit of interesting yellow color in there. Nothing more than that. And then honestly, that's really all that I would do. I hit E to go back to the main editing panel. Let's do a little before and after. That was before, that is after, and that is editing Northern Lights.